All right, folks, so um, let's quickly deal with the sizing issue that we had here with the headings, and then we'll move on to formatting lists, and that'll be it. So once again, you'll notice that I changed the order. One of those things that I think isn't highlighted often enough is how important the order of your code matters in CSS. As you can see, by simply switching the order of normal versus font size, that allowed the text to display at its proper size. So it's really, really key for you to recognize that if you have done shorthand and all of your individual property value pairs work individually, but for some reason they're not working in shorthand, check the order. In the book, we've actually got on page 170 a box, and it talks about formatting for shorthand and all of the information, so be certain you read that and really understand the information in it. The last thing we're going to talk about are lists. So you'll see we've got this very, very, very tiny unordered list here. So let's take a look at this list and figure out what's going on. So first of all, I'm going to put a border around this list. And the reason I'm going to put a border around the list is because I want you to sort of start understanding the way these tags work. If you take a look at the unordered list with the border around it, you can see, first of all, we have two different lists, one nested inside of the other. So that's how you get that sort of sub-list of a main list. You'll also notice that an unordered list is, by default, a block item. That's important, and that's going to become really, really important when we start using unordered lists for things like navigation bars. But the unordered list as a whole is a block element, and that means that you can give it a height, you can give it a width, you can assign background colors, you can do all of that cool stuff that you can do with a full-on block element. You'll also notice that within an unordered list, and let's actually go back to our HTML and take a look, you'll see that nested within an unordered list are list items. These list items are also block elements. So let's kind of take a look here. Let's actually just do that. And so you can see that each individual list item is incorporated. It takes up the full width of the page by default, the whole 9 yards. They are block elements. So once again, when we're dealing with using these items as navigation buttons on navigation bars, this becomes an important consideration, that by default these are elements that will take up the full width of the page, that can be assigned a width and a height and the whole 9 yards. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the way the lists look. There are a couple of different things you might do. One of them is you might change the type of list. So I'm going to list style type, and I'm going to say circle. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us a different type of list, a bulleted list, than we see normally. And you can see that basically that sort of nested list had the little circles, and now so does the larger list. If we'd like to sort of change that, we can say that. And you can't just randomly select characters, you have to actually go in. Now, because we just said that all list items have this, that is why all of them have been changed. If we wanted that second list, that nested list, to have a different type of list style type, what we would need to do is create a selector that specified that nested list. So each unordered list is its own unordered list, but only one of those unordered lists is an unordered list within another one. So we can give this second one its own type of list style. And so you can see that these are filled in circles and those are squares. So once again, a little bit of a review on selectors as well as different types of list style types. You can also choose where the bullets or numbers happen to be located. In this case, we're going to try, let's see, list, style, position, outside, and list, style, position, inside. So let's take a look at what that does. So what you probably noticed is that with the inside, it actually pushed the text over, and that's not really what inside does in and of itself. Ultimately, what inside does is it moves the bullet within the text box. So let's actually take a quick look once again at the border, as this will give us sort of a better visual of what's happening here. Okay. Well, actually, what I would want is let's do this. Okay. So, this is what the difference is. Outside actually locates the bullets on the outside of the sort of invisible box that contains the text for the unordered list. Conversely, inside places it on the inside. Now what that means is that ultimately you're going to have a greater amount of indent for those elements. And that's really the biggest thing it does visually. But just sort of be aware that that's kind of what ends up happening there. The last little thing I'm going to look at is what happens when we're going to get rid of this. So what happens if my list style type is none? What happens is it gets rid of the bullet entirely. Once again, something that you can see being really helpful when you're dealing with creating navigation using an unordered list. By setting your list style type to none, that eliminates the bullet. If you also wanted to get rid of the spacing, because once again, you've got default formatting that comes into play when you're dealing with viewing any element in a browser, and unordered and ordered lists are no exception. You'll notice that even though there are no longer bullets, this text is still indented and it's still treated a little bit differently. Being treated a little bit differently is great when you're dealing with using an unordered list for navigation. However, these margins and padding and stuff like that that are automatically put could certainly be overcome by the use of normalize.css or some other sort of resource. And I believe that that's really all I was going to cover from Chapter 6. There's also discussion of using graphic bullets, and those are useful directions to read. And then we've got some tutorials. So hopefully this close to hour and 15 minutes or so of video will be helpful in terms of helping you go through the information we would have covered in class. This does not preclude you reading the pages in the book. I did not go over every single solitary item in the book, glossed over quite a few of these, and some of them are going to be extraordinarily helpful to you in the upcoming weeks in terms of class and in terms of real-life application. So I definitely recommend that you still go through that information. If you've got questions, if you find yourself going through the exercises at the end of the chapter, or sort of working through this, or working on individual projects, and you run into points where you're just not certain why something's not working the way you want it to, please, please, please feel free to contact me and say, hey, Sid, why does this do this? Why doesn't this do that? Next week, that is the very first Wednesday in February, which, as I recall, is, I think, the 5th or 6th. We will be going through the box model. And the box model is going to play on some of the information we've gotten so far, but it's also really, really key that you understand how to use selectors and how to format text going into it. So hopefully, as I said, these lectures will be of some assistance. Feel free to contact me if you've got questions, or save your questions for class next week when we have our open floor Q&A session at the beginning of class. Otherwise, I'll see all of you next week. Have a safe and happy weekend. Enjoy the warm weather that we're expecting to have starting up in the next couple of days or so. And that's about it. I'll be working on grading Project 1. Should have grades available for you by the time we meet for class next week, and we can also go through it. Talk to you later. Bye.